around 900 people died in just 6 years. But witches are evil, the embodiment of the devil. This was not the Dark Ages. It was the era of Shakespeare, Galileo, and great inventions. 90% of witch burnings occurred during the Renaissance and Enlightenment. So how could a civilized society turn into hell on earth in just 3 years? The answer will send chills down your spine, because it can happen anytime, anywhere. Why did Europe go mad hunting witches? First, the Black Death. From 1347 1351, the plague killed 1/3 of Europe's population. A village of 300 was left with only 100. Smaller outbreaks continued for the next 300 years. Second, the Great Famine of 1315, 1322. 7 years of continuous rain destroyed crops. People ate grass, bark, even human flesh. The population dropped by 10–25%.
The last cow has died. My mother starved to death. My child was taken by the plague, and now even the livestock are gone. Why is God punishing us?
Someone must have cursed our village. It must be the witch.
Third, the Little Ice Age, 1551,700. Temperatures dropped by 2–3 degrees. The Thames River froze, harvests repeatedly failed, famine became frequent. Fourth, the 30 Years' War, 1618–1648. It decimated 30% of Germany's population. Soldiers looted, raped, and murdered. Some areas lost 60% of their people. Fifth, during this period, Christians had an absolute veneration for the existence and power of Jesus, believed to have originated from the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible. The doctrines in this section are based on most of the 24 books of the Jewish Bible. The prohibition of witchcraft or magical practices is also frequently mentioned in the early sermons. In a world drowned in death and suffering, people desperately sought explanations. If it wasn't God's punishment, then surely it was the devil and his collaborators. And together with the lack of understanding about natural phenomena that continually occurred, along with the hardships of life, people believed that witches were the cause of all the suffering they endured. The book Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, published in 1487, became the manual for witch hunting. It provided scientific evidence of witches and how to identify them. And now let's find out why women were the ones most often accused of being witches. Due to the complex interplay of many historical, social, religious, and economic factors, women were considered the most likely to become witches. Religious factors and social perceptions. The concept of Eve and original sin. In Christian doctrine of that time, women were often portrayed as spiritually weak, easily tempted, and capable of leading others into sin, based on the story of Eve and the forbidden fruit. This created an inherent suspicion towards women. The book Malleus Maleficarum details how women, especially older women and widows, were considered the most susceptible to demonic possession due to their inferior nature, uncontrolled lust, and weak intellect. This book provided the theological foundation to justify targeting women. Social and economic factors. Social vulnerability. Women, especially single women, widows, or those without property, often had a low status in society. They had few protectors and were easily isolated, making them easy targets for accusations. Property interests. Many women owned property or inherited it after their husbands died. Accusing and convicting them as witches allowed authorities, such as bishops and nobles, to confiscate their assets, especially when the state treasury was empty due to war, plague, or crop failure. This became a strong economic motive. Traditional roles and competition. Midwives and women with knowledge of folk medicine were often suspected when a child died prematurely or a patient did not recover. Competition between official male doctors and midwives, folk healers, could also lead to slander. Crisis and the need for a scapegoat. In times of social unrest, plague, famine, or war, a scapegoat was needed to explain incomprehensible disasters. Women, already stigmatized and vulnerable, became the ideal target. Psychological and legal factors. Torture and confessions. The legal system at that time permitted and encouraged torture to extract confessions. Under brutal torture, many women and men confessed to anything just to end the pain, including absurd stories of meeting the devil or flying through the air. These confessions were then used to arrest and torture others, creating a domino effect. Lack of self-defense. Women were often denied the right to have a lawyer or did not have enough voice to defend themselves in court due to gender prejudice and lack of social power. In summary, women became the main victims in witch hunts, not because they possessed supernatural abilities, but because they were the most vulnerable targets in a society full of superstition, economic instability, and manipulation of power. But that does not mean there were no men accused of witchcraft. The mechanism of power.
The wheat has died, but our bread remains fresh.
The people are angry about the famine. We need to redirect their rage. Julius Ector was not superstitious. He saw 3 benefits in hunting witches: redirecting discontent away from the government, seizing the property of the convicted.
All the calamities are caused by witches. Denounce them, and prosperity will return.
And then, what was bound to happen did happen. The first victims appeared. Hans had a choice. He could fight fear or let it consume him. He chose the latter. A few days later, fear found its way to Hans's house.
You're the witch. She gave your name.
No, she's not. She's my wife.
Hans was just a pawn. So was Maria. Fear had become a monster, devouring the very people who created it.
I gave money to charity, helped the poor.
That is suspicious. How could a woman be wealthy? Unless it was thanks to the devil?
This is twisted logic. A successful woman is seen as abnormal, therefore she must be a witch. Anna was tortured until she confessed and gave the names of 7 others. Like Anna, the hunt spread like a plague. Each victim had to name 5-10 others. Around 900 people were executed in Würzburg between 1625 and 1631. When society loses its mind, no one is safe. Even 7-year-old children were convicted of conspiring with the devil. To appease the crowd and prove guilt, meaningless tests were performed. Water, fire, weight. There was no way for the innocent to survive.
I've been the confessor priest for 200 burned victims. None of them were truly witches.
Spee was the only one brave enough to speak out. In his work Caudio Criminalis, he exposed the flaws of the witch trials. Torture made people confess to anything. There was no real evidence. The trials violated every principle of justice.
If I could save even one innocent life.
But the voice of reason was too weak against the fever of the masses. Spee had to write anonymously to avoid being killed.
They have arrested Julius Ector's nephew.
In 1631, Julius Ector's nephew was arrested. That's when the ruling class realized the hysteria was out of control. Julius Ector had to hastily put an end to all the trials. But it was too late. Würzburg had become a ghost town. When the purge ended, thousands were dead. Craftsmen, merchants, scholars. The economy collapsed. No skilled workers remained. Society broke down. No one trusted anyone. Knowledge was wiped out. Many physicians and scholars were killed.
My wife, my child, they're all dead. And I still don't understand why.
Würzburg was not the only case. Across Europe, about 50 people were burned for witchcraft. This is a lesson on how society can quickly collapse when emotion overrides reason. Leaders exploit fear. The justice system abandons justice. Dissenting voices are silenced. The Holocaust to Rwanda, from McCarthyism to political purges, we still see the same signs. Currently, Würzburg has a memorial monument project underway to honor the victims of this event.